We are going live in all the places. I'm excited to be here. My name is Kitty Shambliss, founder and creator of the Loving Without Boundaries mission. And I am delighted to be here with Coach B, who is part of our team, our growing team. And we are really excited about that to be here with all of you. And a few different announcements. One is if you haven't seen our podcast of the same name, Loving Without Boundaries, has been nominated for the Women in Podcasting Awards. So we have a blog post on our website about that. We've also been posting on social media. So if you would like to support women in podcasting and you appreciate our mission here, which is helping people live their most authentic lives, no matter the relationship structure, free of jealousy and insecurity, shame and guilt, as well as the pain of infidelity in the open relationship and sex positivity space, as well as just helping raise voices and normalize the conversation around consensual non-monogamy. I invite you to go to the links that we've been sharing. I'll share them on the comments in this post in Facebook and various places as well. Maybe I'll put it in the comments here so that if you do want to vote, our podcast is listed under the relationships category, and that is Loving Without Boundaries. And we definitely appreciate your support, and not only for Loving Without Boundaries, but you can also vote for other podcasts and other categories as well, supporting women in the podcasting industry and helping elevate those voices. So with that, I just want to say if you are part of our Loving Without Boundaries free online community on Facebook, we want to say we're glad you're here. If you're seeing this on other platforms, we welcome you as well. And if you are looking for a community, feel free to search for us on Facebook. Loving Without Boundaries, Healthy Open Relationships and Lifestyle Freedom, and come join almost 15,000 community members at this point. And you also can join our mailing list as well so that you can be alerted to when we're speaking in your area and different announcements that we make. So with that, B has a beautiful topic that she brought up to talk about, a restorative approach to repair. And I'm very excited to have this conversation with you, B. So I would love to give you the mic and have you start us off, please.
Thank you, Kitty. I'm also excited to have this conversation. It's a super important, like extremely important skill to have in any of our relationships, to have the ability to approach ruptures and repairs in relationships in a really productive and constructive way. I really want to highlight that many of us, or maybe most of us, have not been modeled how to handle ruptures in our relationship, or even that disharmony from time to time is a natural part of any type of relationship between parents, between siblings, between co-workers, and of course, between romantic partners. I want to first touch on briefly what can be considered as rupture. So one definition that I want to give you is rupture can be basically anything that you experience as a break in the connection, in the flow of love, or the flow of trust within the relationship. And this is a very complex terrain to navigate, the ruptures and the repair, because ruptures can look in so many different ways. For example, it can look like agreements being broken, or someone has big news, partner A has a big news to share, and partner B is preoccupied with something, and they're just not aligned or not attuned in that particular moment. Or, for example, with consent, we agree that my partner can have other relationships. So we're talking about specifically consensual non-monogamy. And after my partner has sex with someone else for the first time outside of the relationship, I experience a type of loss in a way that I just feel that I won't be able to relate to them the same way, have the same depth of connection, or maybe I experience some rift in the trust between the two of us. So with that, I just wanted to highlight that ruptures can look in very different ways, and also how we address these ruptures. But it's really important to build that particular skill set to have that restorative approach to repair in order for have long-term relationship sustainability and, of course, day-to-day relationship satisfaction. sometimes certain fears and blocks can hinder us in really coming together as teammates. I already mentioned that maybe we've just not modeled how to come together and co-create really positive solutions together. Or maybe there can be fears around vulnerability, like I'm really terrified to really open up, to really let down my walls, or sometimes people have a really hard time to admit where they made a mistake, or they were wrong, or they violated an agreement, or in cases there can be a misalignment with the pacing as well. Like someone wants to make a repair and the other person is just not ready, and that can create further rifts in the relationship. So definitely, as I said, we're dealing with a very complex terrain, so it's important that we address this particular topic in ourselves and with our partners with the utmost delicacy and compassion as well. A lot of compassion for sure.
Thank you for that beautiful intro. And I can also speak from firsthand experience and from a really vulnerable place that it can be so challenging. I want to highlight what you said there. When one person is seeking repair and the other person is either unwilling or not capable at that moment in time, or they're not on the same page, that can be very, very painful. So I think this is such an important conversation because I've experienced that as well. It can lead to pain within an intimate relationship. It can lead to estrangement. There's all different ways that can be very painful when one person is seeking repair and the other person is not. Because some people, let's face it, some people enjoy the fight. Some people enjoy drama. They bring it into their lives. That can become a habit, right? Like just like our emotional lives can become a habit, whether leaning into anger, or even deep sadness, those can be habits. It can also be a habit to seek out drama and non-repair and almost making things worse. So this is a really important topic and a reminder to seek out people who maybe are interested more in some of the same things that you are, and that may be also restorative repair. So I really appreciate this topic, but I'll go ahead and give the mic back over to you. And thank you for this beautiful topic.
Thanks, Gilly. I want to stack on what you shared, the drama aspect. So when that happens, when we're unwilling or unable to have skillful interactions with each other, that can manifest, like the most striking way that it shows up is with our communication and behavior. So we can end up expressing ourselves to destructive forms, for example, passive aggressiveness, name calling, labeling, screaming and yelling, demands, accusations, comparison, criticism, judgments, or just keep bringing up the past and unwilling to step into that place where we can come together to repair. And I also want to bring an example which may not be something that would be our first thought when it comes to unskillful repair, is operating based on assumptions. And I actually want to mention a recent example that I saw unfolding between two friends. Let's call them Amy and Kate. And Amy interpreted something that Kate said in a way that she felt that she was judged in this particular interaction. And instead of, for example, using embodied nonviolent communication skills and asking for clarification, there was stonewalling going on and withdrawal, and there was no communication between the two ladies. And Kate reached out one day to Amy, like, what is really going on? You disappeared. I missed our connection. And they weren't able to do repair because this person who created a meaning that they were being judged, they weren't willing to communicate. So they could have stepped into that space that, look, when I observed this was happening, I created the meaning that that there might have been some judgments going on, and I felt sad about that. And since I really value our connection, I would like to come together and discuss this. Would you be willing to come together and have a conversation so that we can clear the air between us? So this did not happen, and now the two people are not communicating, and Kate stepped into that place of her healthy boundaries and said that she is not willing to have a connection with someone who's unwilling or unable to have a restorative approach to repair, like these particular conversations. So sadly, the connection broken up simply because there was a lack of skill set happening.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's so incredibly sad. And thank you for sharing that vulnerable story, because it doesn't necessarily have to be that way. But it is true that the old adage of you can't get blood from a stone. If one person is refusing, or as you mentioned, stonewalling, which is one of the four horsemen of the apocalypse we sometimes talk about, then you can't like force somebody to do something they are unwilling to do. Yet it is very sad when that happens, and they may have very super strict boundaries, maybe boundaries that are a little bit too fixed, not as flexible, and that can also be sad if it doesn't have to be that way. And I experienced that even in my own life with different people, where they're not interested in having a restorative conversation at all. And it's very, very sad. And I agree with you that sometimes it can be because one or more people are making an assumption or a judgment or an interpretation about the other person that may not be true, or it may not be 100% true, or it may not be accurate today, because people can evolve and change. And if we don't give some other people some grace or some compassion or some empathy to realize we all make mistakes, we all fall down, and it can be really sad when people aren't willing to have a restorative conversation, lean into forgiveness, and move away from either holding grudges or living in a habitual state of resentment. And I always love the quote that if we're not able to move out of that state, it can be like taking poison, hoping the other person will die. And I love that quote because it reminds us that we're essentially hurting ourselves when we are not willing to learn how to resolve things that happened in the past and step into repair. But also the positive side is it is empowering, because then we can simply decide and choose for our own self-care, for our own self-empathy and compassion, to have potentially a healing conversation. So I'll give the mic back over to you, B.
I want to circle back. It is something that you shared about, that sometimes people can have like maybe a little bit too rigid boundaries when it comes to initiating or receiving repair. And there's something else on the other end of the spectrum, which is like way too porous boundaries. So what can also happen, that like big rifts or ruptures happen in the relationship, and we might end up with enabling patterns, enabling unskillful behavior coming towards us, or poor behavior. And with that, we also enable our own boundaryless state. So sometimes we might make that interpretation that for the peace and for the harmony, which is completely going to be superficial, we would rather not say anything because maybe my needs don't matter as much, or I really want to avoid conflicts. So I decide that we'll stay away from setting up any healthy boundaries. The issue with that is that it can feel peaceful in the moment when we don't really come together and talk about the rupture, when we don't do repair, when we sweep it under the rug or minimize what was happening. But the resentment, as you mentioned, Kitty, is gonna keep growing. Me resenting the other person, and also me resenting myself, because I'm signaling to my system that I actually don't show up for myself. I don't show up for myself, and I don't show up for this relationship. So that's always some part of me that's gonna be watching and listening and saying that in some fashion I'm abandoning myself.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. That really resonates with me, and I'm sure with a lot of our listeners as well. And to counteract that too, well, to touch on that point, it can start to, that growing resentment inside of ourselves can start to chip away at our sense of self-worth, our sense of self-respect. It can feed some unfortunate core beliefs like I'm not lovable, I'm not worthy. Like you said, my needs don't matter, my voice isn't important and shouldn't be counted, right? Those are all really destructive thought processes that can happen for all of us. Yet we also don't want this to sound all doom and gloom. There are many ways to move through this. And number one is knowing yourself, being able to trust your own intuition, to possibly find someone to work with, whether that's a mentor or a coach, or even doing your own self-reflection on your own, so that you really get to know what are your values, what are your most cherished needs, what helps you to feel safe, what helps you to feel respected and heard in relationships. Because when you really get to know who you are, then it doesn't necessarily matter what's happening around you. You can keep coming back to yourself. Exactly the opposite of what B was just talking about earlier. Instead of abandoning yourself, you can really lean into deep self-love, self-acceptance, and self-respect, so that no matter what else is happening around you, even if other people are pulling away from you or not willing to repair a conversation or a situation, or they abandon you altogether, I like to say, like, you can look in the mirror with integrity and know who you are and what you stand for, and know that you did the best that you could. Even if you made a mistake, knowing that you can apologize, and even if the other person either isn't ready to forgive you or they don't forgive you, you know that you did everything that you absolutely could. And so that's really important, as well as learning skills. As B said earlier, we all can learn skills, whether that's emotional regulation and self-soothing skills, or, as I was referring to earlier, self-inquiry skills, and also surrounding yourself with a supportive network, whether that's a community like our community at Loving Without Boundaries, which we do everything we can to make it feel safe, or if you're in a coaching community that's led by an expert and a professional or two, and finding people who are really in your corner, people who are in Team Kitty's corner or Team B's corner or Team You in your corner, can really change everything. And that's why we're so deeply committed to our mission, is when we believe that once you become a part of our family, of our community, that you become part of our community for life. And if you're in our online community, there are some guidelines so that we can keep that community safe. But we like to just highlight that is all available to you, as long as you're willing to abide by those guidelines. And I'll have B speak in a minute, but just in case anything what we're saying is resonating with you, know that we would love to have a conversation with you to see if you are ready to get any expert or professional help from a coach. We are coaches. We are certified coaches, not therapists. That is very different. There is a blog post that I can also put in the chat here that helps explain the difference. But if you are ready to have that conversation to see if coaching might be right for you, having that community to learn some of these skills we've been talking about, I invite you to go to this link, lovingwithoutboundaries.com/apply. That will take you right into my calendar to just have a look to see what time slot works for you. There'll be a brief application to fill out just to help set us up for success on that call, and we can really hit the ground running and get you an outcome on that call. And then we'll simply meet at that time, have an honest conversation so that I can really see what's going on with you and your loved ones, determine if I think I can help, if we are fit to work together. And if so, we can talk about what that looks like. And if we're not a fit, that's okay too. I will do my best to steer you in the best direction for you so that you get the help and the guidance that you need. And B, anything you would like to shore us up with for the big finish here?
Yes, I brought some questions again, some self-reflective questions. So question one, when misunderstanding arise, what's your first instinct? Avoid, react, or address the situation? And how does this shape the resolution, how you approach when misunderstanding arise? So that's question one. Question two is, when emotions run high in conflict, What physical sensations do you notice in your body? And how might managing these change your approach to repair? If you felt more grounded, if you felt safer, if you felt more calm, how would that possibly change how you approach conflict resolution? Question 3, can you think of a time when a rupture in your relationship was left unresolved? And how did that impact your connection with your partners over time? Question 4, if you had proven strategies for repairing relationship rifts, how do you think it would change the dynamics between you and your partners? If you felt confident in your skill set and your abilities to handle ruptures, either you as an individual or you together, how would that change the dynamic? And I'm going to post this question in the Facebook group as well.
Oh, thank you for doing that, Bea. That's
your
really,
reference.
yeah, thank you for doing that. I've been capturing different things in the comments for folks, including links to some of the things we've been talking about, such as the Women in Podcasting voting link. I also posted a link to a article about the difference between polytherapist versus polyamorous coaching. Also, you can think of that as for consensual non-monogamy and open relationships as well. And Bea will be posting those beautiful self-reflective questions, which is one of the skills we talked about. So with that, we will leave it here and say we are glad to be speaking with you, and we are excited to talk to you next time. And again, if you are looking for a community, feel free to join our free group online. And if you would like to support women in podcasting, please go to the link and feel free to cast your vote. Our podcast that is nominated in the relationship section is called Loving Without Boundaries. And we deeply, deeply appreciate your support of not only our podcast, but other women podcasters around the world. So with that, we will say thank you. And until next time. Bye-bye.